Buenos
Hola,
noches.
buenos
Hello, good friend.
dias. Hello.
We are a day late in putting this episode out because I drove a normally 3 hour drive home in 5.5 hours in a snowstorm yesterday.
Yeah,
So,
I was
you know,
worried for your safety.
yeah, as was I, because we couldn't see the road for like 3 hours. So,
That's crazy.
um, but we made it.
Yeah,
And it's been far too long since we did one of these, so let's go ahead and give this movie a review. Kind of the first blockbuster of the year, if you want to say that. At least the first that both of us were interested enough to give it a watch.
right.
And I will say my favorite part of this experience is that we walked into the theater and I said, I don't know how I'm going to feel about this because I feel like musical biopics are the most played out movies right now.
Right.
And you said, oh, that's my favorite type of movie. And I was like, oh, okay. So I'm curious to see if we got different experiences out of this film.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's always hard to do like spoilers or non spoilers with a biopic because it's like, you know, there's some spoilers, but like it's the dude's life, so you kind of
Right.
already know. Did I say the title of the movie? It's
No.
Bob Marley One Love, the new Bob Marley biopic, um, with Kingsley Ben Adir, I think is how you say his name.
Mhm.
Um, Previously of Barbie and Secret Invasion fame or infamy, depending
Mhm.
on how you view either of those.
Right.
Um, but kind of give us this the rundown, the non spoiler, just your overall thoughts on the movie, real quick.
Yeah, I mean, I I thought it was a really good movie. After the movie, you found out that I actually knew nothing about Bob Marley, like
Yeah,
in the slightest. And that's kind of why I enjoy music biopics so much because this is now the second one I've seen. I still need to see Bohemian Rhapsody. But I saw the Elvis one. Once again, didn't really know anything about Elvis either. So it's a way for me to learn about these people and I mean, as long as they do it in a good way, enjoy how they portray this person. And then it always gets me like, oh, I need to do my research now. Like I need to look into this person and like listen to their music and whatnot. So I found it very enjoyable. I thought the acting was solid. I think however you say his name, played Bob pretty well. Um I love that he's that influential because, like I said, had no idea this man stopped a whole, civil war in freaking Jamaica just
yeah,
from music. So that's legendary. Name another person who's done that. I'll wait.
yeah.
Anyways,
I mean, certainly. I'll start by saying one of the most influential music artists, not only for his music, but obviously for what he did for the music culture and for society in general. Um, I He's one of the very few guys that I feel okay about like genuinely having in my goat musician debate. Like
mm,
there's only a handful, and he's like one of the few that I actually have in there because of just the way he dominated a genre, the way he changed music, the way he changed culture and society. I think there's very few people that have done that with their music and their career, and he's one of the few that I do have in that conversation. And like you, I think it's a good watch.
mhm,
I think it's definitely worthwhile to see as a film. I don't know that it's going to make like my best movies of the year list or
mhm.
that it's going to make one of my favorite films I've ever seen. But it is really enjoyable to watch, and I really enjoyed seeing uh, kind of behind the scenes of the character. I feel like we remember Bob Marley as like this very peaceful, laid back stoner kind of guy.
Right.
And you kind of get a little bit more of the like not aggressive, but just like I don't know, like controlled aggression. If you, like, I'm not sure what to call it, but you
Right.
get like this fire in him quite a few times in the film. That's kind of refreshing and interesting to see. And so often with late heroes or icons, we kind of put them on this pedestal as like perfect.
Hmm.
And I love that you kind of see the ups and downs of his life throughout that, the mistakes he made, the things he did well, people that wronged him, things he could have done differently, or maybe wishes he could have done better or whatever. And it is a really good film overall, and
Yeah.
I did enjoy it quite a bit. Um, we have done movie reviews so long by just, you know, going out on a whim and not having anything that we're really talking about or any
Right.
reason for our audience to believe the scores that we're giving these movies. So we came up with a general outline of kind of how we go through movies, to give them a little more structure in these reviews. And I mean, like we kind of talked about this, it's weird to do spoilers in here, but we'll probably talk about some specifics as we go through. So if that's something you want to avoid, um, you know, the man's life is the man's life, and it's not
Right.
really a secret. So you kind of probably know most of it, but just, you know, if anyone's wanting to wait on that till they see the film, then here's your warning. Um, but let's go ahead and start with our first category, which is the plot of the film. You know, not an unusual direction for a biopic, but kind of walk me through your thoughts on this category.
Yeah, it's yeah. With the whole plot, like you said, like it's very direct. Like yeah, it's quite literally just that. It's just direct. If you know about the dude's life, you know what's going to be talked about, what the major points are going to be. So
Mm-hmm.
like in this film, you know, I'm okay, I'm not gonna lie. If you caught me, then you caught me. But if you didn't, dude, I think I fell asleep for like the first 10 minutes of the movie.
Oh
Like
no, I saw that.
yeah, I
I
was
saw
I,
that.
I I was not lying when I said, dude, I
Yeah,
might fall asleep. Um, so all I remember is they hop up and they're like on tour and whatever. So I kind of put pieces together. I knew that there was like the little like politician extravaganza going on.
yeah,
And so he's going like on tour and they're like trying to come up with, you know, this album and all this music and whatnot where they're gonna perform.
right.
And um you just see like kind of how he starts changing because of this new fame and like more money
Mm-hmm.
and being out in the world with all of his friends and his girl and you know all of his stuff. And you just see him, like I said, him change. um but even then, like there are parts of him that never did, like him wanting to go to Africa to perform. Like that was always a goal for him. It was never about the money, and he never changed that. Like he just left it at that. I just want to go
Yeah,
perform there. And then to see him eventually come back and perform in Jamaica and you know do his whole thing there. So it's very straightforward. I like I said, I didn't know his life like that. So to me, super interesting. I was very intrigued, minus the little nap I took. That's not because of the movie. I was extremely tired. Anyways,
yeah,
I gave the plot overall an 8. I liked it. It was very well put together.
yeah. I mean, I think for me, I rated this as one of the weaker categories, to be honest, in
Yeah.
what we went through, because um, a lot of it focuses on his time in London making the Exodus album, which is a very influential and very big deal album. At the end of the
Hmm.
movie, it says that, like, I think Time magazine rated it the best album of the 20th centuries,
Yeah.
or the 20th century, which is super intriguing. But for one of the most influential artists of the late 20th century and of all time, if you want to say that, there was just way too many important events in his life for me that were glossed over. And while that album making was like a broad extent of the film, like there's a point at the very beginning where they kind of attempt to assassinate him twice,
Yeah.
basically, like in the first couple minutes.
Right.
And that scene happens so quickly that it's like, wait, did he get shot?
Yeah.
Or is he okay? And you like don't really gather that he got shot and was in the hospital until like 10 minutes later at the concert.
Yeah.
And then that concert, that was a very big deal. And they were like, oh, is Bob going to perform? Is he going to, be here? He was just like in this accident. That concert, it's like one song. It's like 30 seconds and then the scene's over. And I was
Yeah.
like, okay, all right. Like maybe we'll get into some other stuff. And then like the film just ends and it's like, yeah. And then Bob did all this crazy stuff after too. Like
Right.
all this important political stuff, all this big musical stuff happened after after what we just showed you.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I get you don't want the movie to be too long. We're at an hour and 45 minutes right now. That's a sweet spot to cut the film off. But like so much of the movie was spent on that making of that album and
Yeah.
his time spent in London when I was like, this could have been like not so brief that it was like a montage, but it could have been a shorter portion of the film, and you could have expanded other points.
Right.
And so for me, I just felt like there was more that could have been done with the plot. A lot that was ignored for someone who was so influential, not only as a musician but as a figure in society. So I
Right.
gave it a 6 out of 10 because I don't think it's bad, but I just think there was more that should have been
Right.
shown in the film.
I didn't realize it was only an hour 45. It felt a lot
Yeah,
longer, and I would have been totally okay if it was a lot longer. I would have been very intrigued. That's crazy.
yeah, yeah, for sure. We'll move into the second category now, which is a little bit hand in hand, but it's the writing of the film, particularly the dialogue, the tone of the movie, how things flow together. For me, I honestly said this was one of the better aspects because
Mm.
I felt like the dialogue and the interactions between characters were where the power of the film was largely.
Mhm.
Um, because you see how he was shaped by different interactions from people around him in his past, from his culture and his society, um, as well as how people react to him once he starts getting famous and how that starts to impact him as well. So
Yeah.
I think it was very well written in terms of that. It really importantly shows the cultural barriers and differences that the Wailers and Bob Marley had to overcome through their journey to fame, which I thought was really interesting. There were some artistic liberties taken.
Mhm.
Like, I don't know if you remember at the end of the film, the guy who shot him at the beginning comes back in his house and like kind of
Yeah.
apologizes. And that, to my knowledge, never happened in his life as more of an
Oh,
artistic liberty.
cool.
But as an artistic liberty, I think it provides what we as the audience need to know about Bob at this point in his life. Like he's moved on from that. He doesn't hold that against this person.
Yeah.
He's more focused on the here and now. And so I gave because it was one of the better aspects. I ended up giving this portion an 8 out of 10.
Mm. So I ended up giving it a 7. Um just because I'm not gonna lie, when I did wake up, I was a little discombobulated, so I was very confused on anything that was kind of going on. Um, but nonetheless, like I really enjoyed like kind of what you're saying, how they're um how they just like act and talk to each other like when they're all around like this little group of just musicians. And like some of my favorite or at least one of my favorite parts is when they are recording Exodus and they're just all vibing and like hanging out. But then even I don't know his wife's name, but when she like confronted
Mm-hmm.
him and like kind of popped off on him and like got real for a sec,
Right.
it's just those little points that I think makes it as good as it is.
Mm-hmm.
So for that I gave it a 7.
Fair enough. The next section here is the visuals of the film, cinematography, set design, all this good stuff. For me, this was nothing like spectacular where you're like, oh my gosh, what am I seeing?
Yeah.
And it was also not anything that was like stand outishly bad. Like
Right.
this looks like it was recorded, in an alley behind a Dollar Tree. Yeah, um, it was. I will say I did enjoy. There was a big influence, I think you could tell through the Rastafarian colors throughout the movie, the red,
Mhm.
yellow, and green, and that lighting and tone of the set design came back a lot, which I thought was really cool, as a way to incorporate that culture into the film, which was obviously so big for Bob Marley and the Wailers. I also did enjoy there was moments where he was kind of having flashbacks of like traumatic events from earlier in his life.
Yeah.
Um, I thought those were pretty well incorporated and were kind of cool visually to see like he's at this concert seeing all these people and yet his like fears are kind of traumatizing him because of these, events or of the past or whatever, and they kind of blend those scenes together, which I thought was pretty cool. But I did give it a 6 out of 10 because I thought it was like very standard for how to film
Mhm.
a movie. I didn't think it was anything too special.
Yeah. I gave this one a 7 as well. Um, just because I didn't expect anything crazy, incredible, like out of this world. I expected it to be very direct, very simple, to the point. These are the shots that we need. I do, like you said, like the incorporation of his little flashbacks. I thought that was I'm not the first time it popped up, I was kind of getting a little nervous in my chest. Like my chest started freaking out a little bit, tensing up a little bit. Because I was just like, what the heck's going on? Um, but kind of like you said, he's around all of these people, and yet he's thinking about, his past. But at the same time, the like what he's singing and like performing is so different than like what he's actually
Mm-hmm.
thinking. So you can tell that like I don't know, it's just like he feels the music, so he's able to just like get through it no matter like kind of what he's thinking. I thought that was really cool. But yeah, like some of my favorite scenes are just the ones where he's hanging out like with his group, like
Mm-hmm.
just the shots of him in the studio or like them playing soccer. Like he was just a normal dude like everyone else. Like dude was, playing soccer, getting high and
Yeah.
making music with his friends. Like that like that's what it is.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I like those shots because I don't know, they feel relatable. Like
Mm-hmm.
this dude is super influential and like big name, and the things that he's done is absolutely crazy. But there are moments where I'm like, okay, like I'm in that situation. Like I've done those things. Like so at those points it feels a little bit more relatable. So I like being able to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll bring us now to our section on the audio here of the movie. Um, and for me, I was I mean, this category has a lot to do with like sound mixing and scores and soundtracks and that kind of stuff. But for a musical biopic, to be honest, I felt like I was kind of left wanting a lot more
Mhm.
from the audio, particularly in terms of the soundtrack. I think the mixing and the dialogue was all fine, and I think you could get the gist of everything that was going on in terms
Yeah.
of that. But there were certainly some moments where like the songs kind of like make you start to feel a groove. But in Elvis and in Bohemian Rhapsody and in a lot of great biopics, I feel like there's these powerful um, anthemic musical moments in the movie that are like you kind of feel in your core.
Yeah.
And I just didn't feel like there was any time that the music just really conveyed that strong sense of emotion to me as the audience. And that's not to say that I was like listening, I was like, oh, this music sucks, right? Like there was a lot of times where I was like, okay, this is kind of, cool and like a good way to incorporate this song. But just for someone whose music was so powerful, I just didn't feel like that power was captured in the film, if that
Mhm.
makes sense.
Yeah.
So for me, this was another six.
Yeah. I also gave this one a 6. I agree. Like seeing Elvis, I can picture a couple times where his music is going nuts, and not only in the film or everybody going crazy, but like I'm feeling it and I'm getting all jazzed up and wishing I was there. And but like I can understand like a little bit of like devil's advocate, that his music, yes, very powerful, very like you feel it, but at the same time, it's very like mellowed out and like groovy. So to say one is more impactful than the, I don't know. Anyways, I do agree. I also didn't like that they used basically one song for every like all of the concerts were just the one song. I was kind of hoping for a little bit of like more.
Yeah, like they
But
didn't let it develop into any kind of set list. It was just like,
yeah, it was
let's give you the first half of this song and, go back to like hanging out.
yeah, it's yeah, that's probably the only thing that like I was kind of let down with. I wish they gave
Sure.
me more. But I mean, I do agree. Like there were times where I was like grooving and like kind of singing along in my head and just vibing. So,
Yeah,
but yeah, it was definitely probably a weaker point. There could have been more, I feel like.
definitely. Let's go into the characters in the film. Obviously, with the biopic, I'm assuming most of these are all, real people.
Yeah.
Occasionally, in like a historical biopic, you'll get some that are not technically real people, but were kind of based on real people. But that's neither here nor there. I really felt like this was one of the more excellent parts of the
Mm,
film because you see how these characters grow and develop and interact with each other and how they're shaped differently by similar experiences throughout their time. And I really appreciated that. I thought it was uh, a way that it allowed you to become very invested in the characters
hmm
because you're seeing like how, not only these traumatic events shaped Bob's life, but you're seeing how it shaped his wife and how it's affecting her. And you kind of get these moments of where it builds to something like where she confronts him, like you're talking about, and they kind of have to come together and start figuring things out a little bit.
yeah.
Um, or you have him, this this same situation has had him and his like booking manager guy that they've kind of gone in opposite directions, and
hmm
he has kind of like become more selfish out of it, whereas Bob has become like more wanting to protect everybody kind of thing. But
Yeah.
anyways, I'll digress and just say I felt like I became very invested in the characters' development because of how they were portrayed. So I gave this section an 8.
Nice. I gave it a 7 just for how many characters there were, and mind you, seven's a solid number. But for as many characters as you have, and I get like they can't, all be main characters, even like main
Mm-hmm.
side characters, but like I feel like there was really like there's Bob, his wife, and then in my opinion, the next two are his booking manager, but then the I don't know what his position is, but the label
Yeah,
dude
the
where
exec that's working with
yeah,
him. Mm-hmm.
yeah. But then other than that, like nobody else really like stood out as like, oh, he's like a for real character. No, it was just kind of like, okay, it's Bob and his group of friends and then his wife.
Yeah,
So but nonetheless, one of the characters that I think was cool to see was the label executive or whatever he is. Um Usually in a musician's life, or at least when labels were a lot more prominent, um, you see these people and these labels trying to manipulate and take advantage of these artists. But he was like
mm-hmm.
the first one that I noticed that like didn't do that. Like he kind of knew what Bob was about, like still wanted him to, be the best that he could be, but like was truly looking out for him. Like when he had cancer and his toe was absolutely jacked, that's disgusting. That makes me want to gag right now. That's so gross. um but like he was one of the first and only people, or at least within the film, that was like,
That they
dude,
show. Yeah,
dude, go see a doctor. Like we can hold off like on performing like everything. Let's make sure that you're all right because that's
yeah,
important. So it was really cool to see that like, okay, this label exec like truly does care about, Bob and like what he's about and what he's trying to do. So I
right.
I I did enjoy his character quite a bit.
Yeah, I will say, like particularly the interaction with his, I don't know if he's his manager or just an executive from the label, but this guy that you're referring to, when they're working on Exodus and the distributor comes to like see what they're going with, and like, is like, there's nothing on this album cover, like we
Yeah.
want to see Bob, like that's not going to sell CDs. And Bob's like, kind of like, dude, this is not how we do things here, like this is what we're going with. And the distributor kind of looks over at the label executive and he's just like, dude, he's the man, like you're just going to say no to this guy. And so I particularly enjoyed that sequence. I thought that was
Yeah.
a good comedic like break, and like showed kind of the dynamic that the band had
Yeah.
with him. Uh, but let's go into kind of our last general overall section here, which is just the enjoyability of the film. So much of the art of movies is just what you get out of it. And I will say for me, I don't think enjoyability necessarily means like I'm going to rewatch this movie every week. Like,
Right.
it's the most watchable movie ever. There's movies that are kind of heartbreaking and that are hard to watch that are like, wow, I really got something out of that. This is a very well done film.
Yeah.
But just kind of like a catch all category for how we felt going through this one. Let's hear your thoughts.
Dude, I gave it a 9. This was like I think it was very beautifully done. I learned quite a bit about who Bob was. It made me want to go out, and I mean I still haven't, but I do plan to. But it makes me want to go out and truly learn like what Bob really was about, and like more so into his life, more of his music. And when you're doing a music biopic, I feel like that's like not a necessity, because not everybody's gonna be like that. But for me, like I probably wouldn't have enjoyed it as much if I didn't feel like some sort of connection, or like want to do that. Um, Not only that, I think, however you say his name, but the dude that played Bob Marley, I think he did an exceptional
Mm-hmm.
job. I love just learning a little bit about like the culture over there, and yeah, just all of it. I think the movie was very, very well done, which is great because before even deciding to do the podcast, we were like, oh, like, should we do it? Should we not? There's been like
Mm-hmm.
some not great reviews, but like I'm glad that we did, and it's yeah, very, very much enjoyed that movie.
Nice, nice for sure. I'll kind of echo what you ended with there. That we were kind of hesitant because there were a lot of critical reviews of the film. And I will say, like the reviews that I've seen, like I'm not an expert on Jamaican culture. I'm not an expert on Bob Marley's life. So if they're criticizing things like they didn't get the accents right, they didn't get the culture right, like you know, I wouldn't be able to like criticize you and be like, no, they did great Jamaican accents.
Right, right,
Like I'm not a linguistics coach or a dialect coach. Like I'm not going to be able to tell you if they killed that or not.
right.
Um, and if that's the criticisms, then that's cool or whatever, and that's a part of it. But I did see a lot of criticisms that were similar to mine, that were like they spent too much time in standard biopic elements and not on important aspects of his life.
Mhm.
And I'll agree with that. But generally, I did feel like it wasn't anything too groundbreaking of a film. Like it wasn't something that I'm like, everybody needs to get in the theater and see this
Yeah,
ASAP, movie of the year for sure.
right.
But it's a worthwhile watch. Like I
Mhm.
enjoyed it a lot. I enjoyed the movie going experience. And I think most importantly is kind of what you touched on, that it increases your appreciation for the artist and the person.
Right.
And that's certainly the point of any biopic, but as a musical biopic and a biopic specifically about Bob Marley, I think it does its job very well to help you get to know the person a little better, to help you get to know his contribution to music better and his contribution to society and Jamaican culture better. Um, so I really respected that aspect and enjoyed that aspect a lot. Because it wasn't anything like super groundbreaking, but I did enjoy it quite a bit. I gave this section a 7.
Mm,
And so overall, the movie for me comes out to just over 6.5, just a little
mm.
below 7, which is a pretty fair representation. I feel somewhere in between a 6 and a 7 with
Yeah.
watching this one.
Yeah, mine came out to a 7.5. I'm cool with that. Like between 7 and 8, I'm very okay with that.
Amen. I mean, it's certainly a worthwhile watch. Like if
Yeah,
you haven't seen it, if you can't stand biopics, then maybe it's not for you.
maybe stay
But
away.
it is really cool to kind of see him portrayed on the big screen and see his life. I didn't realize until we started the film, his son does kind of, I think it was Ziggy, does kind of an intro to like welcome the audience to the film.
Mm,
And then at the end, like I think tons of his living immediate family was producers on the film. So they were pretty heavily involved with it, which I think was cool
yeah,
and certainly an important aspect if you're going to make a movie about a person's life to kind of get in with the
yeah.
people that knew him best. So
That's super
I
cool.
enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. You enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Uh, I've been listening to Bob Marley more. Certainly, I went through Exodus today, as a matter of fact.
Oh, nice.
Um, Good album, solid album. I will say the song that I pulled out of the movie that I was like, this is maybe one of the best songs that he ever made was the redemption song at the
Mm,
end of the movie.
yeah.
That he's kind of playing acoustic with his kids around the fireplace. And then she's like, when his wife's like, when did you write that? And he was like, just now. And she's like, okay, then you're ready. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh shoot, like, he's gonna do something crazy. And then the movie ended. And I was
Yeah,
like, oh,
literally.
what are we doing?
Literally.
Um, yeah, I wish there was a little more to it. I wish maybe it had been done slightly differently, but overall a great film.
Yeah, agreed.
And we're a little behind the times. We got a new music review that's we're planning to have come out in a few days here, and then hopefully, if my school schedule will allow me to do this, we're going to see the new Dune and put out a review. This is a big one for the sci-fi culture. I feel like it's been
Yeah,
all over. So
absolutely.
um, stay tuned for something coming up on that. And we also have some exciting, cool episodes that I think are down the pipeline that are in the works. And leave us a comment to let us know, did they do the Jamaican accents well? Because I really am curious to know now that I've seen so many people like, it was terrible. It was great.
Right.
I really don't know. So let us know.
Agreed.
All right. We'll be back with some new February music in a couple days here. Thanks for tuning in.
As they say in Jamaica, yeah, man.